Hello and welcome. Before we begin this vlog, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Bidjigal and Gadigal peoples of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respect to elders both past, present, and emerging. We're joined today by Miss Karen Caswell, who is a fourth grade teacher from Queensland, Australia. As an Indigenous champion at her school, Karen encourages her colleagues to implement teaching strategies that are supportive of Indigenous students and supports the use of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives across the curriculum. Karen, would love to introduce yourself and hear a bit about you.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I walk, live and learn, the Balajan, Coomameri and Yugambeh speaking people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also to welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who will be watching or listening. So as you've said, my name is Karen Caswell. Currently I teach Year 4 and I'm a collegial coach and beginning teacher mentor at a primary school on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. I'm early childhood trained teacher. I started my career teaching preschool, prep and grade 1. But I've recently been moved up grades and have taught Year 3 and Year 4. It's currently my 5th year teaching Year 4. I've also been privileged to work as a learning support teacher, special education teacher in charge, instructional coach and head of curriculum. I mentioned that I do have the role within my school of Indigenous Champion. That is a role that our region has initiated as a priority within our schools in our area. And it is a leadership role for an experienced teacher in terms of supporting schools moving forward with embedding the cultures and histories and perspectives. It's really important, I think. I always will make sure that, I'm upfront that I'm not an expert in this area. As a non-Indigenous person, this is work that I'm doing in this space. And certainly, I've had to do a lot of unlearning, relearning, and have a lot more learning to do within this area. But it is certainly something that is important and I feel really valuable. And it's something that, I'm willing to invest that time in to improve.
So with NAIDOC week coming up and the theme is get up, stand up and show up, I was interested to hear, what does NAIDOC week mean to you and how do you approach it as an educator?
Okay, so I think NAIDOC Week is a time to celebrate and recognise the histories, cultures and achievements of our First Nations peoples, and is a really great opportunity to immerse our students in rich and impactful learning experiences. We've just completed our history unit on colonisation at our school, which explores the impact of colonisation on First Australians. And that can be quite heavy content, especially for 9 and 10-year-olds. We've also recently the significant dates of Sorry Day and Reconciliation Week. So I think NAIDOC Week gives us a really good opportunity for more of that sense of celebration, because it's important that we not only focus on, the negative impacts of colonisation, but that we recognise and celebrate First Nations achievements and excellence.
So it sounds like it's something that you are, of course, looking to celebrate and engage with throughout the entire school year. For NAIDOC week and throughout the whole school year, what are some suitable activities or approaches classroom educators can use?
So I think the great thing about NAIDOC week is it does have the annual theme. So it does provide a focus for the learning and can guide the learning in that way. And it's also a really good opportunity for teachers to begin to increase their confidence with embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. So this year, we can engage with the theme, the Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up, by getting up and investigating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures and achievements, standing up and celebrating First Australian changemakers, and showing up to amplify the continuing need for change moving forward. I know many schools use NAIDOC week as an opportunity to invite community groups such as dancers and artists, elders into the school for workshops and presentations. And it's also a really good opportunity for schools, I know, to create a cumulative whole school display to celebrate.
I know, Karen, that you are an avid reader, and I was wondering if you could share with us some book recommendations that are supportive of Indigenous students and supports the use of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives.
So I'm really passionate about reading, so I use any chance I can get to include books. And I think that it's probably one of the easiest places to start incorporating our First Nations perspectives. In terms of NAIDOC Week, some really good recommendations for some texts that do focus on the culture, the histories, the achievements. There's Hello and Welcome and My Culture and Me by Greg Dryce. There's Finding Our Heart by Thomas Mayer, which is a story about the Uluru Statement for young Australians. Somebody's Land and Ceremony by Adam Goods and Ellie Lang. And Our Home, Our Heartbeat by Briggs and illustrated by Rachel Sarah, which celebrates past and present First Nations legends. So there are obviously lots of other books in terms of other content, but in regards to NAIDOC Week, there's some really great places to start. Picture books, with some beautiful illustrations, but, I believe picture books can be used and read by all ages.
And how can schools in general address the main aims of NAIDOC beyond NAIDOC Week in meaningful and authentic ways?
So there's access to many resources with links to the Australian curriculum, and they have ideas to help teachers plan for NAIDOC Week. So through the NAIDOC website, you can get the link to the SBS Learn resources. There's Australians Together, Cool Australia, Common Ground, and Narrangunawali, which all have amazing resources covering a range of lessons and ideas for how to embed those First Nations perspectives. And then also they do have specific NAIDOC Week resources, Reconciliation Week, Sorry Day as well. So while those significant dates, such as NAIDOC Week, Sorry Day and Reconciliation Week are a great place to start, we really need to also be doing the work to authentically embed our First Nature's cultures, histories and perspectives into as many learning experiences as possible. And I know for a lot of teachers, this can be quite difficult based on, our learning at school and our knowledge and understanding ourselves. So it really does require that intentional learning on our behalf in order to be able to do this. And when we talk about embedding, I think it's important to think, well, what is embedding? So it's when we can include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander points of view in every aspect of our school life. It goes beyond the curriculum content and it includes a whole school approach as well as a planning and teaching approach. For our school, one of the places we started was creating that safe and culturally inclusive environment around our school. So we've commissioned artists, family members from our school. We've created artwork. We have, the language on display around the school. And I think that for families can be, it's really, really important because, they can see that from the minute they walk into the school and see that it's respected and feel that there is more of that safe environment. Because I do know for a lot of our First Nations families with the history that they've experienced in terms of, I guess, dealing with government institutions, there can be that leftover trauma or, feeling of not being respected and included. In terms of why it's really important to do that is we do need to build those long-lasting, authentic relationships with our families, students and community members. Obviously, as a school, student outcomes. So it's making sure that we're improving the outcomes for all our students, but also having that particular lens on our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students as well. And then it gives the students as well that sense of belonging within a school. And we know for all of our students that's vitally important, that they feel that connection and that sense of belonging in order to have success at school.
And Karen, when you talk about embedding, what do you mean?
With some, because that's like it's really quite overwhelming when you talk about, how important it is and the types of things we need to be doing. I think some really simple ways of embedding to begin with. One of the most important places to begin is developing a school or a class acknowledgement of country. Students learning the difference between a welcome and an acknowledgement, why we have them, and then co-constructing that as a school in collaboration with community as well. And then having that displayed. So, in the front office, as soon as you walk in, on your school website, as your newsletter, on class newsletters or school newsletters, your email signature, all of those places that it is visible.
And Karen, how do you think that we can embed these efforts into the classroom as an everyday practice?
Lots of classes have like morning time or class meetings. If we do that in a yarning circle style and we talk about the protocols of a yarning circle, that's another way, when we're consolidating that learning or sharing time, can even be informal within the playground. Introducing traditional language. We have a word of the week program. So where we start with greetings and, introduce words of the week. And then when we're marking the roll, we, instead of good morning, we'll say Jingari or we'll say Balgabudra, which is the language, the Yugambeh language where we are. Even things like reading groups, naming the groups after animals using the traditional language words. And then, like I discussed, texts, books. So with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander characters or by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander authors, and making sure that the texts in your library, you do an audit, especially if the school is an older school. We do know that some of texts that have been published in the past aren't appropriate anymore. So it's making sure that, that they are appropriate as well. And even I know lots of schools do mindfulness these days. So there's the Dadiri, which is the deep listening practice for mindfulness. So obviously it goes way beyond those things, but there are some really great ways, I guess, to implement straight away and get started.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like a huge range of resources that educators can use that goes beyond the classroom. Obviously, I really liked what you said about making sure students and their families feel safe at school as they do at home. As an educator who has really worked within their school community to implement these strategies, what would you say to an educator who might be a bit unsure of how to best start encouraging this in their own school community?
I think the biggest challenge is, teachers really do things with the best of intentions, and, within a good place within their heart. We can be worried about doing the wrong thing or about causing offence. I guess my challenge to that type of thinking in terms of it could be easy to say, well, anything I do is going to be tokenistic. You could say that all of those things I listed there, well, they're just tokenistic. They're not, they really don't add that much value. But in a sense, that's a little bit of an easy way out, I suppose. We do need to do the work. And if we do something wrong, we acknowledge that. And, we have the conversation. We, apologise and we do better moving forward. The most important thing is obviously with all of the work that we're doing around in this space is connecting with community. And that also can be really difficult. I know that where we are, it is hard to find traditional custodians. and to make connections with the traditional custodians. The best place to start, I think, is families within your school. Most of our families aren't local, but we're still making that connection with them and their culture. But it's really to seek out, can you make some connections? Are there elders? Is there a community organisation that you can start that conversation with, and then have their input moving forward?
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much for your time and insight today, Karen. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Thank you so much.